It was 2003, and my family and I, we lived in the small town of Nevada. They ran this motel. It was called the Park Motel. It was a kind of place where you rent $20 rooms. Not a very high-end place to stay. Well, they had this maid that she worked at the whorehouse, and she was cleaning rooms on the side for cash. But she had this boyfriend that was a musician, and he played guitar, and we started talking, and he's like, hey, come over to my place sometime, and we'll jam or something. And I'm like, well, sounds cool. So I get my guitar and amp one day, and I go over to his place, and he has this drummer over there. His name is Chinky, and Chinky's an Asian guy. And I remember seeing his rig around because he drove around this Camaro that had said 9 lives on the windshield. And I'm pretty sure that he used quite a few of those lives. But Chinky is a great musician and a fabulous drummer. I enjoyed working with him. But he introduced me to a Mexican fellow named Tom, and Tom was a bass player. Now Tom, he played all over. He had this band called Premonition, and everybody looked up to Tom because he was like the mentor for all the local musicians at that time. Well, Tom and Chinky and I, we started jamming a little, and it was fun for the time being. And I didn't really think much of it because we didn't hear from each other for a couple months or so. Well, later that I guess you'd say fall or winter, my brother, he leaves Idaho because he's running from the law. I guess he had a warrant out for his arrest. Well, he shows up, he's high on drugs, and my brother Joe, he's a fun guy. He makes mistakes, but what can I say? He's fun to hang out with. And we started going to the bars, to the karaoke and stuff like that. We went to this place called Club 40, and there was a couple acoustics around, and me and Joe, we used to sit there and just jam a little, and he'd show off for the bartender there. And one night, Tom, he shows up, and he had his girlfriend with him at the time, and he's like, we should get together and jam a little. Come over to my place, and we'll play some songs or whatever. And me and Joe was like, yeah, sounds like fun, So we decided we'd go over to his place, and Chinky's there, and Tom, and we were just like playing some old classics like ZZ Top and a little bit of Queen and stuff like that. And it was fun. Well, the next day I get a phone call, and Tom's like, hey man, we got a gig. I'm like, what? We just played yesterday. And he's like, yeah, we got booked to play the Mine Shop Bar. And he was pretty eager to start something. And I said, all right, I guess we can do it. And he told me how many sets we'd be doing. And me and my brother, we went over to his place and we started talking. And me, him, and Chinky, we decided to name the band Torque. Well, later down the road, Chinky's like, he sounds a little bit like Dork. He's like, yeah, so let's change the K and put a Q there. So we did that, kind of make it look cooler. We did some promo pics, the first one at least. And we go out one night, and Chinky's like telling me and my brother Joe, he says, it's like bad luck, man, to party at a place you're going to play the next night. Well, apparently my brother Joe, he wasn't really paying attention because I think he was jonesing for some dope. And next night after that, we were going to do a band practice, and I'm waiting for my brother Joe to show up. And I'm like, where's Joe at? I'm asking my family. They're like, I don't know. I hadn't heard from him. And I'm like, I don't want to go there by myself. So I had no choice because I was going to be late if I didn't. So I go over to Tom's, and I see Chinky and Tom, and I'm like, they're asking me where Joe's at. And I'm like, he's not around. And Tom's like, oh, well, that's okay. Let's change the set around. So we started changing the set list around, playing as a 3-piece band at that time. And after we're done, I leave and heading home, and I see all these cop lights, and I'm thinking, shoot, somebody must have got in trouble at the motel. Well, I show up, and a police officer comes up to me. He's like, are you Oscar? And I'm like, no, because Oscar's my brother's real name. He goes by Joe, but his real name is Oscar. And apparently, I guess Joe ended up stealing a pickup from the Mine Shaft Bar. The Mine Shaft Bar, the same place we're supposed to play at. Well, they have their guns drawn at him, and he's hiding in the back seat of a Nissan Pulsar. Now, this thing was a small, ugly little rig. And they finally get him out of the rig, and they handcuff him, and they send him off to county. And then one of the people from the rooms, old man, he was probably 70 or 80 years old, he tells me, he's like, hey man, your brother, he told me he just killed the man. Because apparently my brother seen him at the Red Line Casino, and he's beating on the window, and he's like, hey, come here, and he tells him he killed the guy or something. Yeah, which was silly, because if the guy would have been dead, then he would have got accused for murder. But I ended up assuring Russo, I'm like, no, he didn't kill anybody. My brother's high on drugs. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. And he's like calming down. He's like, okay, But needless to say, Cheeky comes over and he's like, hey man, we're going to be fine. We'll do this as a 3-piece band. And we did. We ended up playing that weekend at the Mine Shaft, and that was my first show in Nevada. And boy, was it one to remember.